Now, we talk about a lot of topics, and unfortunately, everybody's not going to agree on everything. My goal on the long haul and my goal as a person is to take different perspectives and hear different sides of stories to formulate my own opinion. There is a lot of very, very passionate people that are speaking about what we're seeing in regards to non-domiciled CDLs in the industry. And what I wanted to do is bring a variety of these people on in multiple different editions, so that way we can hear their perspectives. This is what we're doing over the next couple of long haul episodes surrounding this specific issue, is hearing different perspectives and different voices and allowing people to make their own and formulate their own opinion based on that. Because at the end of the day, freedom of speech is one of the freedoms that we have, and it's important that we embrace that freedom. But then also at the end of the day, you can't hear someone else's opinion if you're not listening. So with the next couple of episodes that are specifically surrounding non-domiciled CDL, which is a very, very hot and sensitive subject, we have a variety of different people that will be joining us to help us put that out and be able to hear different perspectives on it. And with today's episode, we have Lewie Pugh from OOIDA who'll be doing that for us.
Your rig is where you work, where you rock out. Your rig is your livelihood. So when that DPF light comes on, give your rig the respect it deserves. As for Road Warrior, stronger seals, better manufacturing, and it's made of metal that lasts. Less downtime and more miles on the road so you can haul longer. Respect the rig. Become a Road Warrior.
Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is a show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode and edition of The Long Haul. Look, the last few weeks have been loud, all kinds of things going on, but HR5688, which is a Non-Domiciled CDL Integrity Act, has got drivers, small carriers, commentators, and advocacy groups all talking at the same time. And depending on who you listening to, you think that the bill either saves the industry or destroys it. But here's the truth. Most people haven't actually read the bill in its entirety, and most of the takes flying around online may be built on fragments or flat out misinformation. So today, we're going to go straight to the source. I'm joined by Lewie Pugh, who's the Executive Vice President of OOIDA, someone who's been on the road, behind the wheel, in the hearings, and in the rooms where the decisions happen. We're going to talk about the bill, the backlash, the misunderstandings, and all that good stuff, and the new reality where advocacy organizations aren't just judged by policy, they're judged by how they show up to the people who depend on them. Before we jump in, though, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to hit like, share, subscribe, and check out www.freightwavesplaybook.com for our weekly breakdowns built for small carriers and owner-operators. So without further ado, Lewie, thanks for being here. Let's go ahead and get on into it. Lewie, you've been in the industry from the ground up, man. Army Reserve, motor transport, company driver, flatbed owner-operator, Landstar, and then OOIDA. How does that lived experience really shape the way you approach every single policy decision that takes place today?
Well, I try to use my past experiences through life and trucking and everything like that, real world experience, I guess you would say. And then, and since I've come in here, I've learned more experience as far as the way Washington works. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really understand how it really works. You know, we take government in high school or maybe saw some after school specials and stuff like that. And that's not exactly how everything works in DC. And then, of course, you have to know which branch and which department handles which things too. So it gets very complicated. So fortunately, I have plenty of past experience, and I'm able to move that into, this position and use the experience I gained to this position with the government to kind of try to, explain to truckers, this is how this works, as far as getting something done in Washington, and explain to Washington, this is how what you're going to do. What you're doing or not doing is affecting folks out on the road making their living, and when it comes to trucking, you're not only affecting truckers, but you're affecting other motorists on the highway and highway safety in general. There's a lot of things that get affected when it comes to trucking.
The thing is that you sit in a very unique place, being that you actually sat behind the wheel of a truck, and then you also are helping influence policy decisions. And when you think about we call them letter organizations, whether it's the OOIDA, whether it's TIA, whether it's ATA, there's a lot of influence that comes behind that. And that influence that comes behind that are perceived from the folks that are in the seats that you sat in before, that are behind the wheel, and they're looking for that support, and they're looking to ensure that that voice matters when those policies are being made at. Do you feel that there's a misconception in terms of how quickly things can happen? And do you think that that's a frustrating place when it comes down to the folks that are out there in the roads every day?
Yeah, I think it's a huge misconception. I wish to God I could snap my fingers, fix all these problems, and honestly go back to trucking in a lot of days. I mean, I jokingly say, but it's really true. OOIDA was started 52 years ago by a handful of truckers who, during the Arab oil embargo, went to Washington, D.C. Their entire plan was not to build some national trucking organization or association. Their plan was to go try to address a few problems that was plaguing the industry at the time and go back to trucking. And they went to DC and realized it's going to take a while. And, here we are 52 years later. And in some senses, we're still fighting some of the same fights they were started as fighting so long ago. So, yeah, it's very frustrating. And I get it. I mean, I don't think that's just a frustration to truckers. I think that's a frustration to America in general, because the way our system was designed and set up, I mean, I think we got the greatest government, greatest place in the world. But unfortunately, as time has moved on, things have gotten bigger. There's all more kinds of groups. I don't know how many there's thousands of different organizations and stuff in DC, and everybody's trying to get their piece of the pie. And now we have so much controversy, partisan controversy in Washington. It's hard to get them to join forces to get anything done. And it's just a very, very frustrating thing.
So would you say that partisan, just the back and forth, is the reason why 52 years later we haven't made some of the advancements that you spoke about that we should have made by now?
I wouldn't say that's the whole thing for 52 years. I think that's the last probably 10 to 15, especially the last 10. I mean, we all know, I think social media, unfortunately, has, where it has its good things, it's kind of elevated this whole partisan because, I grew up in a split family. Half my family was Democrats and half my family were Republicans. They weren't really that much different, like it seemed, and nobody hated anybody for it. They had a few different opinions on things and how things should play out, but all in all, we all wanted what was best for America and everybody, I guess. And now it's like, if you're a Republican and you admit that, there's people out there, they just hate you. And if you're a Democrat and admit that, there's people out there that they just hate you. They don't even know who you are or anything about you. And and again, I feel like that's gotten eviscerated with social media. But going back to that, here and there, that's a problem. I mean, look at truck parking. Okay. We've passed that through the House now. I think 3 times we got it to the floor, 2 times at least. It's bipartisan. Everybody on Capitol Hill is talking about it. Democrats, Republicans, they all agree that we need it. There's a couple outliers, crazy outliers on both sides. But the mass majority, we've gotten this to the House floor. We've had a mere bill in the Senate that we've worked through. 2 bills and match, bipartisan. That's like Moses parting the Red Sea in today's world.
It doesn't happen like that all the time.
Right. But we still haven't got it across the finish line because they can't get together long enough in General Assembly to put this onto some other bill, or which is the way it's going to have to be. You can't hardly pass anything standalone or standalone, whatever, to pass it. We all know we need it. We all know parking's at a crisis level. 1 in every 11. We saw what happened in Illinois a couple years ago. We know there's more accidents. We know truckers need a safe place to rest. But yet, because of partisan crap, we still can't get this through.
But that kind of makes me worried as far as the future is concerned with some of the other things that are really, really important, and that really we feel that is a layup, right? You talked about, the truck parking bill was probably the easiest one to get through, and we couldn't get that passed. And that kind of pushes us through to HR5688. There has not been a hotter, maybe hot topic shouldn't be the right word to use it, but there has not been a topic that's more discussed. And I was at a football game 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to a gentleman at the football game, and he knew who I was. And the first thing that he asked me is, what are your thoughts on non-domiciled CDLs? And he was not even in the industry. He was an athletic director for a college. And these are things that it's garnered so much attention lately. I really want to talk about it. But before we get into everything that's surrounding it, I want you to walk us through what the problem was designed to solve, not emotionally, not politically, just the operational problem that it was designed to solve.
Well, the so-called problem that it was to solve was if, say, a person living in the state of Florida went to, say, Utah to work for a motor carrier. Okay. And that motor carrier has a trucking school, or they put them through a trucking school or something, or they just went to a trucking school there. Okay. Right. Whatever. And that they could train and all these things, and they could get their CDL in that state, even though they weren't a resident. So that would be a non-domiciled CDL. Because, of course, the big thing that we heard at the time was this person goes to work for this motor carrier. They train them. They get them everything. All they need to do now is get their CDL, but they have a permit, and they can't drive back to whatever state in the truck without a trainer or something. So this way, they could go ahead and give them a CDL and turn them loose on the road. We can argue whether that's a good idea or a bad idea as well. That's an whole other problem. But with that being said, that's what they were trying to fix. And unfortunately, which we were against that, I had to push back. But what we didn't realize, I think the people who wanted this to happen, which was ATA and others who wanted this, I don't think anybody realized that we were opening the floodgates to not only allow people from other states, but other countries come here and get CDLs. Yeah, and that's what's happened. And unfortunately, and I know that's not what we were talking about, what this really stems from is the training aspect of this stuff too, because there's a lot of unscrupulous trucking schools out there that were giving these people training and these people should have never gotten behind the steering wheel in the first place. And had the schools been doing what they should have been doing, and probably if we had real strict training laws like we should, these things wouldn't have happened in the first place. But again, I know that's more than what you're asking for.
Well, and the thing that you bring up, and it's important for people to understand this too, because a lot of mega carriers, they have training centers, right? So, you might have to fly out to, let's say a PAM Transport or a Stevens Transport, and you have to fly out to Dallas. You live in North Carolina, you've got a North Carolina driver's license. But when you go into Dallas, you go through their program down, say, in Dallas. You go through the program, you get your CDL there. And you get your CDL there because you're going through their training program, their examination process, and you get a non-domiciled CDL in which you can have to go back to your home state and just transfer your CDL. So that was the design. And then also you had military folks that had to use that as well. So that was the overall design of the program. But then when you have when there's an inch for a margin of error, then once that opens up and you don't have it to where it's sealed shut, that's when you have the issues. So part of that problem is that a lot of people, they automatically assume non-domiciled CDL is bad because of everything that's happened.
Yeah, exactly. And they do. I'm not saying that non-domiciled CDL, I mean, as I'm sure you're well aware, OOIDA sent letters to the 40-some states that are issuing these non-domiciled and asked them all to cease and desist, just in the program. And we don't have to worry about these people. Because again, what do we really need this for? I mean, I understand the kid may go out there, but if that motor carrier really wants to hire that person, then maybe that motor carrier should get them back to their state, get them their license,
third-party test,
then turn them out loose.
Yeah.
You know, this is just one more of those things that got started and got pushed through because for the last 40 years, we've been regulating and legislating from this whole bullcrap driver shortage narrative. Got this driver shortage. We got to get these people driving truck because we just don't have enough truck drivers. Well, we do. We got plenty of truck drivers. What we don't have is plenty of pay for those truck drivers, plenty of training for those truck drivers, plenty of places to sleep for those truck drivers, and so they don't stay.
Yeah.
Huge turnover, as we both know. Huge turnover, 90% plus turnover in our industry. 400,000 to 500,000 new CDLs every year. So we don't need to fast track trucking. I don't understand it for the life of me. We all need electricians. We all need furnace repairmen. We all need barbers. We all need doctors. We all need lawyers. But, you know, we need carpenters, all these different people. Nobody fast tracks them. We want them to know what they're doing when they come and work on our house or fix our furnace or electrician, and just sticking to blue collar professionals, those people, you know, pave our drive, whatever. Why wouldn't we want the guy hauling the products back and forth who is also, or gal, who's also a skilled blue collar worker, takes a lot of skill to drive a truck? A lot. Why do we want to fast track them? Why do we want to fast track people in this industry? You know, we want to, that way we can keep their wages down. Shippers and receivers can steal their time. And carriers won't push to pay them. We don't have to worry about finding them a place to park, even though we should. Carriers won't pay for their parking, which is, or you know, out there, which, you know, there's all these things going on. There shouldn't be. And it all stems from a driver shortage in the beginning. And that's how we've gotten to this place. That's why we have, unfortunately, so many people coming from other places to drive truck, because the job pretty much sucks anymore. And Americans just don't want to do it. I mean, when the McDonald's across the street here from my office pays a better starting wage than some trucking jobs, that's a problem. That's a real problem.
And you know, the thing is, it's been perpetual. It's been going on for forever. I mean, I've been in the industry 25 years. I know you've been in the industry longer than I have, but I remember when I first started in industry, it was always a shortage. It was always that. But you know, the crazy thing about it is that there's always been just a continuous churn of drivers. And then, you know, into my opinion, and this is one of the things, is that the even the mechanism and the mechanical side of it has been really put in place to help support the narrative that we need to make the truck easier to actually operate, so that way we can get drivers in here faster and turn them quicker. And it's just continuous. And when you think about what's happened in this week in the multiple areas of FMCSA announcements that have been made this week from a compliance perspective, my hope is that some of this stuff slows down and we can kind of address some of that as we go through. But when you look at much of the backlash of HR5688, and you and I joked a little bit before we went on that you guys have gotten some heat around that. You know, you got some heat around that. And here's the thing. The Twitter, social media, you know, you name whatever platform that you want to choose from, it has connected the people closer than they ever have been. But sometimes you don't give the ability to say your side, to really get your side out, to talk to the people. And when you look at the major organizations, that's their duty, is to really connect to the people. And OOIDA represents the owner operators. So I want to ask you, with all of the backlash that's built on the belief that HR 5688 invites more foreign drivers into the industry, that's where a lot of it, let's start with the foundation of it. Does the bill, in your opinion, expand access, restrict access, or tighten the rules around the existing process that's in place?
I think it's restricting access. Yes, there is a small piece in there where you can have HB1, HB2, and some other kind of thing there escapes me. But anyways, with all that being said, what this bill, which this is what I don't understand, is nothing but codifying the regulation, the IFR, the interim final rule that was put out by Secretary Duffy and the Trump administration. This is mirrored language. It's the exact same thing. And when that came out from DOT and FMCSA, and that came out, everybody's praising it. This is the greatest thing, blah, 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 blah. And then when Congressman Rouser come up with a bill to codify this, to make this a law, which is what we need to happen, because what people need to remember, any kind of rule or regulation that DOT comes out with, like this IFR on this, the next administration can change it like that, can go back. If Congress makes this a law and codifies this rule as I'm talking, then it will take Congress to change it. Same way the ELD works. And there's a lot of people out there hate on FMCSA. And there's things you can hate on FMCSA for sure. I'm not saying that about ELDs. FMCSA did not make ELDs the rule. That was a congressional act, congressional mandate. The only way ELDs will ever go away is with congressional mandate. Congress has to do it. And that's what's happening here. So that's why I don't understand when these people praised it when it was Duffy Trump, but now they hate on Rouser, and it's the same language. And the people that can get these, and again, I'm not an immigration expert, don't claim to be, okay? But they have to go through the process. They have to be vetted. Bureau of Labor has to show that there's a need. There's all these steps. It isn't just walk into America, legally or not, go to certain states like California and some others, and go to the DMV and get this license, or go to some screwy trucking school, and get this license and be turned loose and nobody knows who you are or what you are. That's not how this process is supposed to work. Now again, things can happen, but the way it's supposed to work, it's supposed to be a need, a process. And in my understanding is to even get one of these visas, you have to pony up like $100,000 or something. So I don't think a lot of people are going to be staying in line and do that as well. From the research that we've done here at OOIDA, since 2009 to now, if this was come a law, the amount of CDLs that have been issued that would have fell under that since 2009 to now are 6,000 only. There's only been 6,000.
In comparison to the hundreds of thousands.
Yes. So the hundreds of thousands that we know that are out there, that's a different animal. But of the ones, the way that the IFR was written and the way that Rouser's bill is written, when we went back and looked, from what we can tell, if you took all those CDLs out and only looked at those CDLs that were issued, there was only been 6,000 from 2009 till now. So that's a drop in the bucket, as we know. Would I like to see none? 100%. Would OOIDA like to see none? 100%. I remind you, OOIDA sent a letter to 43 governors across this country, cease and desist on non-domiciled CDL, just quit doing it. But I'm also I'm a realist, and I understand that what I want, what you want, what everybody wants, we got to find happy medium ground. We don't get everything we want.
And the thing is that let's go back to a few pieces of the bill just so we can make sure that there's an understanding. I think the language that most people are concerned about is where it says visa determined by secretary. And you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that, hey, it could change from administration to administration. So if Duffy as the secretary determined the visa language, it could be different if Louis Pugh becomes secretary in 2028. And that's caused the most panic. So from your perspective, does that clause actually restrict, or does it really empower to where it's open up another loophole that could potentially be something that could be circumvented long term?
Well, it's the secretary, but we still have to go back, and there has to be a need. They have to file for the visa. They have to pay for the visa. So there's all these other things. Again, I mean, anything can happen, and I understand that. But we have to do something. Right now, we have nothing. Mm-hmm. Okay? And again, I'm not an immigration attorney, but I do know that the way this is written, that they have to follow all these steps. And if the secretary wants to make up his mind then so be it. They went through the steps as long as we're going through the steps. But we have to pass something, because if we don't get this codified, what we better be afraid of is the next administration just does away with the IFR completely, and it's back to the wild, wild west. Anybody can get a CDL.
Well, wouldn't it be advantageous for us to possibly get to the table and amend the actual HR so that it actually removes the potential for the loopholes? Because, you said it, anything can happen. But when you have general language in there, like, hey, it's determined by secretary, or the visa is determined by secretary, wouldn't we want to remove that language out of there to make sure that this doesn't happen and that we fix it one time, then and not have to deal with it down the road?
Yeah, I would love to see it. Like I said, I would love to see no non-domiciled CDLs, period. Mm-hmm. Not even just for Americans, just none. Period. That's what I would like to see. That's what OOIDA would like to see. Because again, we feel like these are, solutions in search of problems. But with that being said, if you get the law out there, things can be amended and changed in the law as it goes through the process, and which is something that we would work. What we have to keep in mind, though, and again, is the fact Congressman Rouser is the chair of the Highway Transit Subcommittee of T&I. So of all these bills that are out there floating around, his has probably got the best chance to see light of day when he's the chair of the committee.
So we got the best. So we got the best chance with him in place to make sure it gets right the one time, and ensure that we don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. And Congressman Rouser is open to conversations. His staff is open to conversations. I've had multiple conversations with him and his staff. I was in D.C. 2 weeks ago and ran into him walking up the street, and we talked for a few minutes. And he wants to fix. I mean, that's why he introduced this bill. That's why he took the language that President Trump and Secretary Duffy put out in an IFR, knowing that this could be changed at any time with a new, and trying to codify that into federal law. That's why he did what he did. So, I'm sure he has reason. I'm sure that Trump and Duffy have reason for why they put that in there. That's a good question for Trump and Duffy and Rouser. But, we can either go to the table and talk like adults, like human beings, like you and I. We may not agree, but we can go talk. Or we can go out here and slam everybody and yell at everybody and wave our fists and all kinds of stuff and just alienate people and divide ourselves as truckers and all this stuff, and just make this whole bill so toxic that Rouser and everybody wants anything to do with it. Because that's the thing we have to remember. In this crazy bipartisan world we're living in, you got to be really, really careful how toxic things get, because it's real easy for lawmakers to just say, that's too toxic for me, I'm out, And
you mentioned at a good point that, like, there has to be an opportunity for folks to get to the table to be able to discuss those things, because when you look at it, the congressman that put this in place, he doesn't have all the answers. You know, they're trying to secure a situation that would make it better for us in long term. But then what we want to make sure that happens, especially on the driver side and in the trucking side, is we want to make sure that we don't run into the loopholes. Because I think that is the biggest thing more than anything, is because when you have loopholes, and, you know, I look at some of the language, and I'm going to read some of the language to you, and I know you've read this over. The state confirms the applicant's lawful immigration status before issuing, transferring, renewing, or upgrading a license issued under this paragraph. Or the individual possesses a visa determined by the secretary to be directly connected to a legitimate employment-based reason to hold a CDL. And then another where it says, again, the state retains records related to the issuance of a license under this paragraph for not less than 2 years or for a period otherwise prescribed by the secretary. And I think that what the issue behind that is how in the world can we go to the table and say, hey, we don't like that. We don't like that because that's a potential loophole. How does the trucking community better connect to voice that to where, like you said, it's constructive, it gets to the right people, and then it doesn't become this toxic gumbo to where they're like, well, listen, we're going to just do this and this is going to be that. How can we get better at that?
Well, I'd like to say that if everybody would join OOIDA, that would make things a lot better.
Can't say that. Can't say that.
Sure,
Can't say that. Oh, I guess you can say it.
But again, we have to focus on, we have to be realistic in the trucking industry. We have to be realistic in all in Americans. Okay. It's like I said earlier, we're never going to get everything we want. We're never going to get that. I mean, I don't want to pay taxes, but I got to. You know, lots of people don't want to pay taxes, but there's lots of things out here. But what we got to, we can find common ground, middle road. Attacking people, again, I go back to where I don't understand. When Trump and Duffy came out with this in an IFR, it was celebrated by the trucking industry. It was like, everybody's all happy.
Well, because there was nothing done before. You got to remember that. So you got to remember, you got to remember too, at that time, that was a matter of seeing all of the accidents that were associated with it. There was all, you know, social media exasperated that time, and it was like a waving of the white flag. And the fact that the industry was finally being heard was celebrated. I think that was the first part. So to your point, I think that that's the reason why it was celebrated so early.
That's probably something to that. But again, it was celebrated all thing. And then all of a sudden, when Rouser came out with a bill that was going to codify it, all of a sudden he's a sellout and this is terrible. And that's what I don't understand. I still don't understand. But I do know to get things done, you have to have professional adult conversations. And just going off half-cocked and radically and calling people names and saying things that aren't true and stuff like that, that doesn't get you anywhere. That gets you shut out and doesn't get you part of the conversation, you know? And that's what we've seen happen. And I get it. I was a trucker. And, you know, we used to have CB Rambos.
Yeah.
People get on the radio. It's like social media has become the new place for CB Rambos and CB and truck stop lawyers and all this stuff. Everybody has an opinion, and that's fine. Everybody should have an opinion. Everybody has a right to have an opinion.
Right.
But the problem we get to is instead of having an opinion, we have our opinion, but instead of having good talking points or trying to have a conversation of why my opinion's better than your opinion, per se, it gets into hate. You know, we make it personal, or we pick on this person, and you can't do that. You know, I've had people say to me, "Why don't you attack these other groups?" I don't attack nobody. I'm just going to tell you what I know as Lewie Pugh. I learned a long time ago, you catch a lot more flies with honey than you ever do with salt.
Today's episode is brought to you by Trucking Hub. Now listen, if you're still bouncing between 5 different logins just to run your trucking business, you're already behind. Trucking Hub is built by a carrier for carriers, and it puts everything under one roof, whether it be dispatch, safety, maintenance, and even accountant and a driver app.
Their dispatch runs on PC Miler and Copilot navigation, so the miles are right the first time. Now, the ELD is FMCSA certified, tamper-proof, and trusted since 2017. And if you want to keep it all in one lane, you can even roll in company phones, text and video, and fax backed by nationwide LTE. Bottom line, this is the kind of system that's you spend less time hopping and more time hauling. Plans start at just $29 per truck, no contracts, no hidden fees, and you can try it for free for 30 days. Check them out at their website and get your time back.
And that's a good, and you know, Lewie, that kind of ties back to what we talked about at the very beginning, is that people hate each other for a variety of reasons. And because that either you're one side or the other, that hatred will spew from that. And either you're for, and this is me talking in general, so I'm just going to speak in general. Either you for the trucker or you not. And either you 100% everything that comes with it for, because you can't be 1% on the other side. And I think that's come from the political climate that we've been experiencing over the last 10 years, that you can't have and I don't like political conversations because, like, I'm bigger than politics. You know what I'm saying? But you can't be 99% conservative and have 1% Democratic views, or be 99% Democrat and have 1% conservative views. You either all in or all out. And I think that what has happened too is that when people look at that bill and people look at OOIDA, owner operators look to OOIDA as the agency that's our voice. OOIDA is our voice. And if OOIDA is not listening to us, they must be 1% on the other side. And that's where I think that some of that comes from, especially when I look at it, I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe perhaps there needs to be these town halls that are public and people actually see what's happening and see these conversations that are taking place, so that way that they know. And then, you know, just like you talked about in the beginning, you know, some of it is just because you don't understand the total parts of the bill. And I'm not saying the listeners on this particular episode don't understand it or do understand it. We're just talking in general. But I think that a lot of it is, like you said, it's that 1% piece where you're like, you know, we can get a lot of this passed. We're not going to get everything that we want. But what we don't want to do is we don't want the door to shut to where your voice is not being heard at all. Because at that point, we're going to be right back at square one. Yeah, you guys been in existence 52 years plus, and still to this day, maybe fighting some of those things, you know, not all, but you still got some of those things that are residual. I've been in the business going on 26 years, and we still can't shake the dingleberry narrative of the driver shortage. So it's like some of the things that never go away if we never figure out how to get together. And that's the reason why I wanted to have this call. You know, some of the folks believe that OOIDA supports foreign non-domiciled CDLs. Where is that coming from? And can you speak directly to that? And you know,
yeah, I can. Yeah, OOIDA does not support foreign non-domiciled CDLs. I'll remind you, OOIDA does not support non-domiciled CDLs, period. Every time this came up, when this come up and got passed in 2019, OOIDA was the only people out there saying no, pushing back. Unfortunately, and this happens a lot, these things seem like really small, minute problems when they're going through Washington. And I get it. And again, I'm not throwing truckers under the bus, but because I get it. I was a trucker too. When I heard about small, minute little things like that when I was trucking, what do I care? It never affects me. It got nothing to do with me. What do I care? So there was times I didn't call my lawmaker or do the things that OOIDA wanted us to do. And, you know, what happened, though, was through OOIDA's forethought of seeing that this little small problem could become a big problem. Not as big as what we thought.
right.
I mean, it got way bigger than what we thought, I should say.
Sure.
Myself. But we knew it would be an issue. We knew, if nothing else, it wasn't helping driver pay. It wasn't helping any of these things. It was just putting more butts in the seats, which was playing to the shortage. But with all that being said, we fought against it. It got passed. Here we are 5-6 years later. Now it's this huge problem. Unfortunately, people didn't really pay attention to it back in 2019.
And y'all were screaming it. Y'all were screaming it back in 2019.
What's that?
Y'all were screaming no back in 2019.
We were screaming no, but not, like I said, members didn't really get behind it, not really care, because it's like I said, because I get it. Because when you're trucking and you're in a trucking, you're worried about you and what affects you and in your life. And sometimes, and I mean, I've been on the board at OOIDA since 2004, and I would come out of the board meetings, I'd be like, why are we even dealing with this? Because it doesn't affect Lewie Pugh or Lewie Pugh's world, but, there's a lot of truckers out there, and that's what truckers forget. It's a big, diverse industry. And we always have to try to look as what's best for the industry in a whole, maybe not what's this sector, this person, this section, whatever. So that always creates rubs, and I get it. But that's what people have to remember. We're looking for better. But with that all being said, now all of a sudden this has become this huge problem, and we have these people out there going, where was OOIDA? OOIDA didn't do anything, blah, 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 blah. OOIDA been talking about this since, 2015, 2012, I don't know. It's just like ELDs. We fought ELDs to the end. We had bills in Congress to pause it, stop it. We had lawmakers flip at the last moment. We took it to the Supreme Court, and we lost. We lost. But we fought it as far as we could fight it, all the way. And you know what the sad thing is? A lot of people didn't take that serious until it was too late. And then once it became a reg and everybody's got these computers in their truck, tell them when they can drive, tell them when they can sleep, tell them when they can stop. They're like, oh my God, where's OOIDA? Why didn't you do anything about this?
Well, the thing is too.
And just one second.
Yeah.
Grassroots is how we're successful. We don't have the money and the army of lobbyists and all this stuff that our opponents have. I've got an office in D.C. We've got great lawyers. They're the great guys, but they're a lean, mean special forces fighting machine. They don't have, each one of them doesn't have just one thing to work on. They have tons of things to work on, and they cross work. I go down. We don't have a great big PAC fund. Our members are generous, but we still have nothing like we really, really need or would like to have. If I get every member to give $5 to our PAC fund, oh my God, we'd be so strong, so much stronger. If I get every trucker to join, we'd be so stronger. But where we really shine is when truckers pick up that telephone and call their lawmakers. When we send these call to actions out, we don't send these out to fill your email or to bug you or whatever. We send them out because these are real issues affecting trucking. And maybe they don't affect you personally, but your brothers and sisters on the highway, they may be affecting them somewhere. And that's why it's so important that you get involved. Call. We have a whole website, Fighting for Truckers. But again, a lot of times, if it doesn't affect me, I'm not. And I think people are that way, not only in trucking, but with everything in this.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then all of a sudden, poof, it becomes a law because nobody was paying attention. And then we're all mad that it's now a law.
The thing is and here's what I say, you took us back to 2015 with some of the things that OOIDA was doing 2015 and 2019. But you know what the biggest difference was back then is that I don't believe that back then, even though it was just a short 10 years ago, social media's explosion hadn't really kicked in. And yeah, I go by this moniker, well done is always better than well said. And when they see action, and whether or not that action gets you anywhere, they see those attempts, I think that goes further. So when I look at it, social media has changed everything. You got advocacy groups that used to speak directly to the industry. Now they're speaking with an entire crowd that can react instantly. And I know this bill is one of those examples of when that advocacy comes and boom, it gets an instant reaction. It can go viral. It gets so much attention from a lot of places. Has OOIDA really adapted to that new accountability environment to where social media is really that vessel of information?
I think, to be perfectly honest with you, we were a little slow like everybody was, because I think it's just like one night you flip the switch and now everybody's on that.
Yeah.
I do think that we have changed. We've hired regular people here. That's what they do. That's what their expertise is and stuff. I think, I think the problem is there's two kinds of social media. There's news and stories and straight out information, stuff like that, like what you're doing, like what we do. And then you have your shock jock, Howard Stern / type people, which are out there too, which nothing wrong with that. They get a lot of attention as well. And it's kind of a crossover. And I think, and I get it. I mean, I watch videos and stuff all the time. I want to watch something that's entertaining. Watching somebody just sit there and talk blah, 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 blah about something gets real boring real quick. So if you're going to do stuff like that, you got to make it really short and to the point and move on. And, we've done some, we're not in the business of being shock jocks at OOIDA. We're in the business of getting the information out there as correctly and as professionally as we can. Yeah, we've done some fun videos. I did a fun video when they killed speed limiters, right in front of DOT. I threw it in the garbage and everything. So we've got some fun. We probably need to add a little more fun stuff to our serious stuff, but it's a work in progress and seeing what works. And too, it's tough because our demographics are so much different across trucking.
Yeah.
Because you have people in their 20s and 30s, they get their news and their information completely different from, somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And then you got the people in between that kind of pull from both things. So trying to figure out how to get all these people to all these people, talk to these people, get them the information they want. It's a tough thing, and it's not just tough, right? It's tough. Everybody's having that problem.
And it's that's a good point because the driver, the average age of a driver, and you compare that to the type of information and how to deliver information. You got to be delicate with the balance. And sometimes, when you look at negative news, it's going to travel up the ladder so fast and it's going to flame out so quickly. It doesn't care what vessel that you use, that everybody's going to figure out how to use it. So I think that that's a good point. When I look at advocacy groups, they once shaped all those policies behind the scenes. And I've seen changes since social media has come about to where some of those things are being like this bill, like, hey, we're showing it to you what's working behind it. Now a single tweet, a single LinkedIn post, that can spark an entire cycle of news around it. So I guess that the question is that how does OOIDA handle the pressure of representing thousands, hundreds of thousands of voices who don't always agree?
Well, I think that's something OOIDA has dealt with long before I was here and will continue to deal with in the future. That's any kind of industry, any kind of public thing or association, the NRA, anybody, they have that, you're never going to always agree. What I try to do is be straight up and be honest. Here's the thing. If you don't agree with me, you can pick up the telephone. You can call here to OOIDA. I'll answer it. Or you can leave me a message and I will call you back and we can talk about it. I'm not going to scream at you or call you names or tell you you're stupid. I'm going to tell you, here's why, what. Now, you can call me names or call me stupid, and people have, and it's fine, because they've already made up their mind and they don't want to hear it. Yeah. Or we can have an adult, rational conversation. And we still, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything in the past 22 years I've been on the board at OOIDA, or 21 years I've been on the board, that I was completely in love with or liked what we were doing. Not because, but it was personal because it wasn't something that affected me or it didn't like me.
Sure.
But what I always try to remember as a board of director, as a leader here at OOIDA, because our board is all made up of active truckers or people who are trucking, is trucking is a lot bigger than just Lewie Pugh. And it's a very big, diverse industry. And let's talk about ELDs. The folks in the cattle industry and livestock haulers, they have a nice exemption, mm-hmm. and they're proud of that. And they should be. Okay? My opinion, and OOIDA's opinion, is why are they any more special than anybody else out here driving a truck? If you can exempt it for them and they're not crashing, okay, What makes them different? I drove for 2.5 million miles and didn't crash. Why do I have to have one? So, we're not into these little, we don't necessarily, and again, it's not that I'm speaking against it or probably against the cow. I'm just saying OOIDA doesn't ask for exemptions for certain little segments.
Sure.
It's for everybody because we have to look at what's best for the entire industry.
And so now, if I go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, bringing this back to the Rouser bill, do I think it's the perfect bill? No. Is it doing exactly what I'd like to see it do or what OOIDA would like to see it do? No, it isn't. What I do know is of all the bills that are out there, it's the best one that's got a chance of getting through and getting signed by the president. Because it mirrors his language. It's being introduced by the chair of the Transit and Highway Subcommittee. And so who's the gatekeeper in the first place? So Republicans are going to support this. I would hope some Democrats will support this as well. And to me, what do we want? Do we want to sit here and fight and argue and say, either we get what we want or we're going to hold our breath till we turn blue? Or are we going to try to find some common ground, meet in the middle, and get something that's way, way, way 99.9% better than what we have right now?
I think, and I'm glad you brought that back up, and I'm glad I'm glad to go back and said it. You said, hey, I don't agree that this is a perfect bill. This bill doesn't have everything that we need. It's closer than what could be in place. I think that the biggest concern when it comes down to the industry is that the open loopholes in terms of the language that is provided under the power of the secretary or pending secretary or incoming secretary, which could put us back in the tailspin again. And they're like, hey, well, why is OOIDA supporting this if there's this language in here that doesn't help us? It maybe it'll when it codifies it, maybe it'll go through and it gets signed off, but how do we prevent this from happening again to where we go right back to a flood of non-qualified drivers taking the wheels of trucks in American highways and causing issues?
Well, again, they have to have those 3 visas to begin with.
But they're saying that no, they're not wanting, the trucking community say we don't need visas.
I understand, but I'm getting to what you're saying on the loopholes. Okay? Right here, right now, well, with the IFR in place, but that's all tied up in court. Right now, it's wide open. There is the loopholes huge.
Right.
Okay? What they do is by closing this down to only these 3 visas, and again, it starts with Bureau of Labor saying they have to have the need. They have to go through all these things. Then you have to, a company or corporation or whatever has to pony up the money for these people to have this visa if we need these people in our industry or to do this work at all, if any kind of need. And then we can get to where if somebody can make this decision of whether it's needed or not of the secretary. So there's bars in place before it ever gets to that level in the first place. So that's the thing. Again, isn't perfect. Again, to me, perfect, no non-domiciled CDLs for anyone. That would be perfect.
Including trainees that are in American trainees that go down, they fly into these companies.
Again, if I own a trucking company here in Missouri and you want to come up from Tennessee and work for me and I'm going to train you, then it's my responsibility, should be, if I really want you to work for me, get you back to Tennessee to get your driver's license.
Yeah.
And you know what? Realistically, let's be honest. If you never drove a truck before and you come up to my training school for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm a damn fool if I don't put you with a trainer to go back to Tennessee and plus a lot of other places till I turn you loose on your own. So again, we want well-trained professional drivers behind the wheel. Who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that. We want accident numbers and safety numbers to go the right way. And that's how it should be. Making the CDL process easier to get flies in the face of all that. I don't care what they're doing. Any way you make it easier is making folks less safe on the highway.
I agree.
But to me, this whole loophole that we're scared of, anything can happen. But again, there's things put in place prior to it getting to that level. And I would think that would be some regardless, it's better than what we have now. Regardless.
Is there a way? I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, there's some other bills out there that should help if we can get them passed on English proficiency and some of that other stuff, which will make this even harder for folks to get.
So for the folks that say, hey, you know what? Either this bill says scrap all non-domiciled CDLs, to your point, period, or nothing at all. Where would that take us in terms of the next 4 years? What would be the negative impact of that?
The negative impact, if we say we either get this or nothing, we get it the way we want it or nothing, which, like you said, me, no non-domiciled CDLs or nothing. So we wouldn't support this. What will happen is in 3 years from now, we get a new president and a new administration. Now, depends on what side of the aisle they're from, of course, probably, but I don't know. Who knows in today's political? But if they feel differently about this rule, they can change it pretty much with the stroke of a pen, and it'll go right back to the way it is. I say, and I'll tell you an example of this that's real easy for people to look at: speed limiters. This is something that's been ongoing off and on. It seems like forever. Okay. Duffy killed speed limiters back in June or July, I think. Hallelujah. They're dead for now. But again, just like we've seen in the past, if the Drive Act doesn't pass, which is a rule in Congress to codify the whole speed limiter thing to where we can't have it, defunds it can't be funded. We get a new administration in 3 years. Somebody can petition FMCSA in 3 years, and boom, we'd be right back where we started from. Plus, I'd also remind people that the IFR and all this stuff's going on right now. There's people suing and all these lawsuits going too, suing FMCSA about it, saying this. We codify this in Congress, that shit goes out the window too. So again, I know it's frustrating. I get it. It's very frustrating as a trucker and as somebody out there on the road. Why won't Congress listen? Why? And sometimes they do listen, but then we get so, as an industry, we get so divided ourselves, we mess up the messaging up there. That's happened a little bit on the ELD front because some people went to Washington right before the ELD became, when we had this rule, and we're telling lawmakers, well, if you do this, I can't cheat and come up with all these other things. Well, then some of these lawmakers, they flipped. And, and so you got to be careful how you message, but you also have to understand you're probably never going to get it exactly the way we want it. But something's better than nothing.
And, and when you look at it, and thanks for breaking that down that way, if there was one misconception about OOIDA that you can clear up today, what would be that misconception?
No, we don't fight anymore. I hear that so much. OOIDA doesn't fight anymore. They're in the beds with the feds, and they're in the beds with this person and that person. Well, we're probably better politically connected than we ever have been, okay? First of all, OOIDA is not a union, so we can't call for strikes. We can't tell people apart. That's against the law. We can't do that stuff because we hear that.
Yeah.
But we've learned over the last 52 years, you can either be on the table or at the table. It's very, very important to be at the table so you can have these discussions, so you can talk. Lots of things get stopped before they ever even get out of the gate because of my guys on Capitol Hill working or at meetings that I attend or some other staff attends, and truckers never even hear about it.
Right.
Because we're at the table, not on the table, and we're able to shut these crazy things. I mean, there's been states out there that wanted to pass laws that you had to have a GPS in your truck or you get a ticket if it wasn't a truck GPS. I mean, how crazy is that? because truck GPSs period are only good as what you say, because they thought that would help with bridge strikes and all these crazy things. And I talk to these people, I'm like, the GPS is only as good as the info. And there's really, I mean, they call them truck GPSs, but they're still not 100%. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff out there that gets stopped that people don't know about. And so we are fighting. We do fight. If you pay attention to your emails, you get calls to actions all the time. That's
but you got to remember, you just said it. The truckers, they don't. It's not about the email. You might have an email that goes into an email box that don't even get read. So that's why I think that the biggest gap sometimes is delivering a message to the audience that can see it, and that's why social media is so important.
Agreed. And we put a lot of stuff out on our social. Of course, we're on every social media, including TikTok now, I think.
You got to see you do a TikTok then.
But where I go back to is, and I tell everybody this all the time, if you want to know what we're working on, what we're fighting on, the easiest place for any trucker to find is Fighting for Truckers. And you can go right on there. You can see what we're working on. You can contact your lawmaker there in 30 seconds to a minute. You can actually send a message to your lawmaker faster to them, someone who could maybe make a difference in your life, then you can put a post on social media complaining about a problem that's never going to do anything to help you and change your life other than just give you a place to vent. And so there's that. Again, if you're in question or if somebody out there, and I put anybody, call us. You got a question, call. You call me. You call Todd Spencer. We'll both talk to you. The president and vice president of the company. Reach out to our board. Reach out to our compliance department. Our government affairs. We love truckers here. I love truckers. We love us or hate us or agree or disagree. Sure. You're a trucker, and I cannot imagine what our country would be like without truckers. It would be terrible. We'd be a third world country overnight without 100%. The men and women behind the wheel. And again, I think sometimes you're right. Bad things and probably things that sometimes more entertaining, they get a lot of precedence and they get a lot of views. May not be right, but I mean, for 25 years I drove truck, I heard about the federal marshal. You used to hear all the time, the truck stop lawyers, call federal marshal. You get held up at a shipper too long, you call federal marshal. Your carrier ain't doing something, you call federal marshal. Federal marshal ain't gonna do nothing for you. That's been CB bull BS from forever. And it's the same thing. It's just social media as opposed to a CB radio, but it's the same kind of stuff.
Well, one thing I will say that social media has connected, because Duffy wouldn't be making all these moves if it wasn't for social media. Because
agreed.
I think that, and that's the thing, that I think that there's a gift and there's a curse behind that, when it comes to it. So my last question, what would you say to those who see Bill HR5688 as for what it is? They disagree with the components of the bill, just like you and I disagree with certain components of that bill. Where can they go to where their voice will really, really resonate in the right place, hit the right person, and to perhaps, because it wasn't those sections were amendments to apparently the original form. So those are amendments. So that doesn't mean that that's the finality of it. So where can a trucker go? Is there a comment place? Is there a place where they can go? Is there a town hall? Where can the truckers go to say, I don't like these components of the bill. I want to talk to somebody about it. I want you to understand.
Well, they can reach out to their lawmaker and tell their lawmaker about the bill. I would urge them to tell their lawmaker to support it, because again, this is probably the only one that's going to has a opportunity to get passed. But with that being said, they tell their lawmaker what they'd like to see a change. Maybe, they're going to talk to their staff. They can call Congressman Rausser's office. I mean, it's his legislation, even if they don't vote for him. I mean, they can call his office. But again, be professional. Be professional when you talk to the staff. You're going to talk to a staffer. I mean, if you live in Rausser's district, I'm sure you can find where he's at a town hall or somewhere, get inside, call his office and ask him where he's going to be at a town hall, go talk to him, bring him. But again, be professional. You're a professional trucker. Take your profession and explain to him why you like or don't like the bill. And if he gives you an answer that maybe you don't agree with or don't like, don't degrade him and call him names, all this other kind of stuff. You can say, I respectfully disagree with you because of yah, or whatever. Just leave it alone, however you want to handle it. But be respectful. Because as soon as you stop being respectful and go the other direction, you've lost credibility. Everything you've said from then on, or from before then, that was credible is going to be lost. And you're just going to be pushed off of some crazy radical, unfortunately. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's how it's going to happen. We saw this. I remember a few years ago, we were having hours of service hearing down in D.C., and somebody gave their comments, trucker, everything went good. But, everybody's giving their comments. Well, some safety advocates and some other folks got up, and of course, they were giving a different side of the story.
Probably not so nice.
You're right. And stuff that, as a trucker, you don't agree with.
Yeah.
But again, everybody has their side. And you don't know why that person thinks the way they do, too. I mean, there's all kinds of things here. But
sure.
Anyway, with that all being said, that same person who made really, really good comments got mad, went back up, spoke again about how they don't follow rules, never going to follow rules, these rules are stupid, blah, 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 all this stuff. And guess what was on the front page of the paper up on the Conch Hill the next morning? That trucker admits to never following the rules and all these kind of things. And, and here's DOT, again, trying to do the right thing and give us some flexibility in hours of service. Probably not what everybody wanted. I know it wasn't everything OOIDA wanted. We'd have liked to seen some more, but it was something. It was a first step. And, and fortunately, we still got through, but it made it very, very hard. So again, be professional. Think about what you're saying. Don't say a bunch of really good professional things, and then because you don't agree with one little thing, throw all that out the window. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
No, and I appreciate the conversation, and one of the things that I definitely can appreciate is the importance of professionalism. We all are passionate. I look at all of the entire community, the entire trucking community. We're a community of one, but we're passionate about a lot of different things. And the communication of your passion sometimes can be misconstrued, and your voice matters. And this conversation today was really to talk about, hey, this is the voice. This is what we saw in the bill. This is how OOIDA sees it in a bill. OOIDA being the voice of the owner-operator. This is what they see in a bill. It's not perfect. OOIDA said it's not perfect. They don't agree with some components of the bill, but they agree that there's some things that need to be done in order to position us in the right way. And there's resources now that presented you to such. So, Lewie, I appreciate you stepping into this conversation. I know there's a lot of noise in the industry, and times like this remind us that policy, perception, and public dialogue don't always line up. But what matters is clarity. And today you help bring some of that clarity specifically around that. So for everybody's listening, before you let a clip or a headline decide how you feel, do what we do today. Did today. We step back, let's read the language, ask questions, lean into the discussion. And if we're going to disagree, it's okay. If this episode helped you think a little clearer, please hit that like, share, subscribe, and make sure you're plugged into the long haul for weekly updates designated specifically for you, the small carrier, the owner-operator, and folks that are trying to stay ahead in a loud market. So, Lewie, thank you again for joining us today. I know I appreciate you taking the time with us. I'm Adam. This is The Long Haul. Make sure you stay informed, stay sharp, and always keep those wheels turning. Thank you, everybody.